Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to yet another video, and we have a guest with us today on the channel. It is very I'd say you're quite well known in the City fan base. Fev's well known on Twitter, definitely amongst Championship regulars. So yeah, I have Fevs with me, Bristol City fan. How are you doing, Fevs, after yesterday's debacle?
Yeah, I'm well. Yeah, kind of split football from home life and things like that. So yeah, no, I'm fine. Thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm just about, trotting along and trying to, as you say, split football from my regular life, but it's proving to be quite difficult with the number of football conversations I'm having outside of this. Um, I think if you just need to look at Twitter for the general consensus from yesterday's news, and that's what we're here to talk about. That is Nigel Pearson's departure from Bristol City. Fevs, I messaged you on the would have been the Saturday or so it might have been the Friday, and we were planning on doing a whether he's going to get a new contract or where we stood on that. We were not planning for him being sacked, and we always thought he might resign or leave. But how shocked were you when you actually saw that notification pop up?
I don't think I was that shocked. I think, I know we were planning to talk about contracts and things like that, and I guess my view might have been that I'm not convinced that he's going to get one, and I think it was really then starting to work out what the timeline would be for him leaving the football club. I don't think we really got much of a sense at the club that there was a real desire to keep him beyond his contract, even though the fans seemed really keen on extending his time here, as was I. But I think it started, from the conversations over the last couple of weeks, it started to look like he was on a bit of dodgy ground. I kind of did say a few things last week on things like one team in Bristol around. It wouldn't surprise me if he's gone by the next international break. And I also said it wouldn't surprise me if they got rid of him on Sunday after Cardiff if we took a hammering. But I think that's just me kind of being a bit kind of pessimistic about it. I didn't honestly expect it to happen. So I was a bit shocked when it came through, because I think most of us, I don't know if you went to Cardiff, Annie, but so I'm not normally an away traveller, but I did head over the bridge on Saturday to watch the game, and I thought we gave a really good account of ourselves, in difficult conditions, and I don't mean the weather. I mean, in terms of the injuries we've got, the people we've had to play and players out of position. I thought we were as pretty much as equal as Cardiff. We had conceded a sloppy goal, and they eventually kind of scored in injury time. So I came out of that and thought, that's a it's a pretty good sign that all the players are behind him, they're working hard, etc. So I kind of played down my thoughts I'd had at the back end of last week, thinking nothing would happen, but unfortunately, they did.
So let's just kind of give, if you're neutral watching this, and yeah, let's just give a bit of a timeline. I think the frustrations really started to first, kind of creep in after possibly the Alex Scott sale. I think that's possibly fair to say. I don't really think we saw any signs of frustration towards the owners or players or any others, and any other medium from Nigel Pearson before that. I thought he was happy that we kind of started the recruitment process early in the summer. Um, Obviously, this Alex Scott sale was delayed and delayed and delayed, and he wasn't happy. He didn't get the money after that. Do you think we needed a few more players in through the door, or is he
Yeah,
right to
yeah, no, I
complain about
do. I
that?
think I think we've got a slim squad. We've not got a deep squad. We've we've tried to make it deeper at the early part of the summer with signings like McCrory. Unfortunately, has got injured. Dickey, Knight, and Roberts. So I think that was kind of a positive. But I think we all sat there and said, okay, we don't want to go down the realms of getting 6 or 7 more players in. But I think most of us thought we were a couple of players short. And I think depending on who you speak to, you probably wanted a combination of at least one of a centre back and a centre midfielder, and then maybe both of those, Or some people might have said, well, they'd have liked a goalkeeper in to compete with Max. And some people said, oh, they wanted a centre forward in particular, a target man. I was probably more in those first two positions, another centre back and another centre midfielder, primarily because we had Rob Dickie out. Sorry, not Rob Dickie, Rob Atkinson out. And there's no guarantees how quickly you're going to come back from an ACL. So we knew we were going to be at least half a season light on a centre back. And then I think the view was, well, if Naismith can play there, then that kind of covers that. But then you need a central midfielder because that means Naismith can't play in midfield. So I think the combination of two of those 3/4 positions, I thought we were light. And I think, I'm no medical expert, but I kind of look at it and think not having those couple of extra players has meant we've had to play players, 90 minutes every week. We've seen, over the past couple of seasons, people like Naismith and people like Matty James in particular, they probably don't play, and Joe Williams, they can't play every week 90 minutes. And therefore, you just need that option to just be able to kind of rest and rotate them. And I think that was missing. And then consequently, it then starts to become a vicious circle, and you get around this time of the year, and the amount of injuries we've got are crazy. And unfortunately, a lot of them are things like contact injuries. So Matty James, Naki Wells, George Tanner, all kind of ankle knocks. So there's not a lot you can do about that. The game's physical, so it's just hit us at the wrong time. But I think a couple of players would have left us less exposed than what we are. We shouldn't be having to, give players debuts and then not be able to fill a bench like on Saturday. That's not really where the club should be at. So I don't think really Nigel was backed. And, I think there's a whole host of things that went on at the back end of that window. And then the subsequent interview by Phil Alexander on Sound of the City, where I just felt we were getting a bit of a false message through about what had happened. It seemed to be, let's fit what's the current situation is. Let's say that we all of this was agreed back in March and we've actually followed the plan. It just didn't come out right for me.
No, absolutely. I actually agree with that totally. It kind of felt like we didn't really have a kind of plan. I know Brian Tinian said after the Brian Tinian said before the Alex Scott sale we had a plan A and a plan B, but that didn't really feel like the case because clearly the club wasn't aligned. Pearson had different plans, and the ownership had very different plans as a result as well. Do you agree with that? They were not really aligned in what they were doing.
I guess that goes back to my last point, that sounds like there was a plan and then we didn't execute it. And that sounds to me very much like the hierarchy. The owner have decided that they've got the money in for Alex Scott now. And, I understand it's not as simple as, we got 25 million cash, in Steve Lansdown's hand. It's a bit more complicated than that. But effectively, we've sold a player for a massive sum of money, expecting to be able to invest that in the squad. And then it's been, the rug's been pulled from under the, the recruitment setup and, and the first team. And I think that's where it started to really go downhill because, from the 2.5 years that Nigel's been here, and particularly with Richard Gould before that, fighting off FFP and coming through that by selling Antoine Semenyo and then selling Alex Scott, FFP is no longer an issue, and it really comes down to what are the owners' ambitions, desires to put money into the club. The kind of stupidity of it, and it's probably not the right word, is we're probably going to turn a profit this season. Well, is there a need to turn a profit? Yeah, that's fantastic. But you can't go from lumping 20 million a season into club to say, actually, I want to now make it fully sustainable and I want to make money out of it. Or you can, if you can do what you want. But you need to communicate that to the fans, and we haven't had any communication really through the summer leading up to this point at all. And I think that's where a lot of my frustrations lie. I'm a huge Nigel Pearson fan. I don't think he was perfect as a manager either, though. I think there were some faults in some of the things he did, but I still think him and his staff and the team that he put together were heading in the right direction. And I wouldn't say we were necessarily going to suddenly lift off, but I think we were slowly making our way forward to being that, first of all, top half side with a good run of luck. Who knows where it could have gone? But I think we were starting to position ourselves for, this season, next season, really starting to kick on a bit.
No, I very much agree with that. I think a lot of the City fans, I'd say more than 95%, agree with that sentiment as well. I think there's, general feeling of something's building, and that was seriously hampered by injuries and just general bad just bad luck, really. It's just complete. It's unavoidable sometimes. Well, this kind of the latest batch of interviews Pearson gave to especially the club media sometimes as well, was really quite damning, because normally if a manager comes out and voices their opinion and is frustrated, normally comes through some other source. Pearson also did it with the local radio, but the fact that he did it on club media was pretty damning. I'm not sure before or after some game he spoke about the conversations with Tom Rawcliffe, and from that point, the future of Nigel Pearson was in serious doubt, and it felt like something was definitely bubbling along. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think this has come as a result of Saturday's result at Cardiff. I think this is, as you say, it's been bubbling along before Nigel's made his comments, because I don't think he makes those comments without, something happening. He's not trying. Don't get me wrong. I think he, would like to stay here, wanted a contract, but I don't think you make comments like that unless you're actually kind of starting to feel for your job. I might be widely off the mark with that, but that's how it feels to me anyway.
Yeah. And then the last interview you gave was after Cardiff, and it was signed off, rather typical Nigel Pearson, I suppose, in a way, with the reporter. Forgive me, I forget his name. Saying,
Ali Durden,
yeah, there we go. Saying, well, I'll see you here next week, Nigel. See you next week. Well, hopefully, anyway. In typical, as I said, Nigel Pearson fashion. That kind of signaled the end. There was the weird thing was there was no real rumors, like concrete rumors from credible sources either, which I found really surprising, because normally there is. With Lee Johnson there was, with Dean Holden there was, and I appreciate we're not a top Premier League club or something like that, and not everyone's talking about us, but there's sometimes, not most of the time, Bush to Lie, local radio, something comes out and it just completely came out of the blue. And considering the fact that this may have been a long period of discussions and conversations being had in the background, it's found that quite surprising.
Yeah, I think probably shows, from a club point of view, things are kept a bit more in-house these days. There's probably a couple of people out there that probably did know and, have also felt this is best not to put out there in the public domain. So I think that's probably tightened up a little bit. There's always rumours going around, but nothing, as you say, nothing that kind of, I was on one team in Bristol posting away yesterday, and all of a sudden it was like he's gone, and it's like, whoa, we were speculating about what might happen next, etc. And there it was, rather than I've heard a rumor that he's going. I don't think anything like that came out. It was literally he's gone. So yeah, it's all happened a bit sudden.
Yeah. In the statement that followed, that in itself was a complete different conversation to be had. We'll get on to the owners in a bit, but the owners, the statement, said that this was kind of results based. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. It's kind of results based. He's still well respected at the HPC, and it's kind of, they wanted to make a change in order to better results and progress the team. I find that ridiculous. Have they not been watching us? Have they not been watching us all season? And have they not been following the injury record?
I think
to lie to fans like that as well.
It smacks of a little bit. We're probably not giving you the whole truth here. I think a week ago we were 8th. We were 1 point off the playoffs. Even now we're 15th, but we're 14th on alphabetical order or games against Birmingham, aren't we? But we're 5 points off the playoffs. It's nothing, and I think I don't take any performance or result for granted, but you kind of go into the next two games, and I know we've got injuries, but and with a normal squad out there, you're going into those games confident of picking up some points. You're picking up something like 4 points from two games, if not 6 points. Certainly never take 6 points from two games for granted with Bristol City, but if you get 4 points, you're probably going to have clawed back a couple of points on the playoffs, and suddenly you're 3 points off the playoffs going into an international break, knowing you've got players coming back from injury, and the kind of timing doesn't sound right. It sounds a little bit like we wanted to act and we're just kind of going to say it's results. And I think that the other interesting bit about the announcement was, and I think, let me just quickly look up what it said if I can find it. Bear with me, viewers. It says something about
I've got it in front of me.
We all wanted to achieve the ambition to be promoted, but our recent results feel that now is the time to make the change to give the club the best possible chance of success. So for me, that's laying out to whoever comes in that playoffs is expected. And I know, Steve Lansdowne will say it every year, I want to get promoted, but it really isn't as easy as that in a competitive division where, half a dozen clubs have got parachute payments. There's some clubs who have got momentum, whether that's from coming up or just starting to gradually build, etc. And I just think it's when you cut the budgets by as much as you do, when you say your wage budget's at its maximum and it's the lowest it's been since 2016-17, it's like, where does really that ambition marry up with any reality? And that's the bit that gets me. It's just it just sounds all wrong, I think.
And I think that leads us quite nicely onto the kind of conversations, quite, surreal conversations and quite emotional conversations about the ownership, and especially John and Steve Lansdowne in particular. I'm not sure where to stand on, especially Steve, because, well, he's been here for absolutely ages, and someone who's provided quite a lot of stability to the football club. He's generally kept us quite, challenging in the Championship. He's kept us quite competitive. We've had a few close shaves with the playoffs under Lee Johnson. Had a few famous nights, Man United, etc. So I'm not really sure where to stand on Steve, but John Lansdowne at the moment is not covering himself in too much glory.
I think a lot of it, Annie, goes back to lack of communication. Again, I always kind of say, a good business, whether it's football or not, proactively communicates with its customers. So you get on the front foot with your customers. A less good business reacts to customers moaning because they haven't thought through the impacts of it. And the worst type of business doesn't communicate at all. And we're kind of between those last two that I've just mentioned. And in fact, in some cases, this probably won't come out right. When I hear Steve Lansdowne speak these days, and it tends not to be through the official channels. We've heard him on Guernsey, one of the Guernsey podcasts back in about August or September. What he says now just kind of winds me up. So I've lost a lot of respect for him. And I think, without kind of going over the real history of it, I think it must have been like 6 or 7 years ago, or somewhere around that, when he came out and said, it's my money, I'll make decisions, kind of shut up to the fans. And that was the first point where I thought, it's not really what I expect the owner to come out with. And then I think there have been some other things since then. I guess that Guernsey interview was the one that kind of got me a little bit around. He talked about Luton got promoted with a squad with less talent than we have in our squad. Well, I think that's a pretty crass statement to make, and it really undervalues what Luton did over a succession of years with probably as good, if not better, recruitment than Brentford in that period, based on the kind of resources they had. And I think, to me, that's kind of the crassness of Steve, in that, and you've probably seen, I've written this on Twitter before, I think he's massively focused on outcomes, not focused on processes. So he'll look at, that's a nice shiny Luton town. They've done well. Let's copy them, but without understanding how they got to where they did. And I think that's really kind of maybe what's kind of been the theme of his ownership, is that he's probably not he's not, if this was Hargreaves Lansdown, he'd have the best people involved, his best fund managers, etc. But he's not always had the best people involved from a football point of view, because I think there's an element that he thinks he knows best. And then if we move on to John as chairman, we just don't hear from him, do we? We only hear from him when there's a new appointment or a sacking, and I think that's not the way to communicate with the fans. It's their money; they can run the football club how they like, but eventually they'll cheese the fan base off, and I think that's where we've got to over this summer. And I think before those comments, I think there was quite a split amongst the fans. If you had to pitch Lansdown against Pearson, I think it was a fairly close run thing, but I think he's antagonised some of the fan base, and they've flipped. And I think you said earlier on, it's something like 95% of people wanted to give Nigel Pearson a new contract. That's not happened. He's been sacked.
No, exactly. I suppose it's kind of it would be fun to look back and say where things could have happened, but what would have happened if he got the money, and what would have happened if he'd just shut his mouth and not actually say anything in the media and whatnot. But we'd never know, and to be honest, that's not really the kind of type of character Pearson comes across as. Would you? I think it's fairly obvious he's left us in a better position than he found us in, because we had an overbloated squad. It was I would say it was mainly a mess of Ashton and Johnson, but slightly also the mess of Dean Holden, because honestly the style of play was not really what we needed. He's left us in a better position, and I think just on a human level, I'm really gutted he's left, because if we now go back to hiring a yes man, as I've heard quite a lot on Twitter, I'm gonna miss that kind of character, to just take it by the scruff of the neck and actually have the balls to go ahead and really challenge the Lansdowns.
No, I agree. I think typically, in my lifetime of supporting City, we've typically had to get relegated to reset, and what we've been able to do is been able to reset while staying in the Championship. And I think that's all credit to Nigel Pearson. I mentioned before Richard Gould as well. So, probably have arguments with people about, Nigel hasn't necessarily reduced the wage budget himself, but he's had to deal with the fallout of, a reducing squad, paying less money for players, etc. So, Richard Gould might have done the deals in the past, but Nigel's the one who has to bear the brunt of working with what he's left. And don't get me wrong, he's had his moans over the time, but I think they've been justifiable moans. And I think most of those moans have been with a kind of side view of, but we'll just get on with it, and we'll try and make the best of it. And I think, all credit to him for doing that, because in the last 2 seasons, we've had injuries, but we've never looked like going down. I know there's times where I think we came out of last year's World Cup break where we were something like 17th, 18th, 19th, and not that many points clear of the relegation group. But we beat Rotherham first game back, and it was kind of onwards and upwards from there. So it was like a moment where people might have been worried, and it was quickly dispelled. And I think that's what Nigel Pearson's been able to do. He's been able to get results when we've needed them. We haven't unfortunately had long winning runs, but we've had some long unbeaten runs in that time. I think last season it was something like 10 league games and some cup games. We had a spell early on the season where we went 8 unbeaten, and we were up to about 3rd as well. So I think it's proved that when we've got everyone available, we're not a bad side. We probably were riding a bit of a crest of a wave early part of last season and maybe weren't quite good enough, but we've got ability there, but just need to harness it. And I think going back to the summer conversation, I don't think any of us were expecting tens of millions to be spent on new players. We were probably thinking about another couple of players at $1 million, $1.5 million each, maybe, with the commensurate wages that go alongside that. Nothing that was going to blow budgets out of the water, but that would have left us in such a stronger position. And it feels like it's a wasted opportunity for me.
Not even that. It was just a couple of, sensible loan deals like we have with
or even
Garner
loans,
Hickman. Yeah, just a couple of sensible ones that are gonna, might not start every game, but will happily just, take the place on the bench and compete. And Pearson's, Pearson's main thing has just been bringing players in who are willing to, fight and compete. But again, that's a conversation in the past, I suppose. Moving forward, we've obviously had this has been a day and a bit since Pearson's gone, so we've had a few names being linked, notably from Rob Dorset on Sky Sports. He's quite a renowned source, especially in the Championship. So he's gone with the fact that Bristol City, the owners want to act, the board want to act pretty quickly to get a new manager in. Whether that's in by Sheffield Wednesday or not, don't think that will be the case. The three names that have been mentioned are Nathan Jones, John Eustace, and Gary Rowett. I'm not going to ask you for your opinion on each of them, but in terms of a general style of play, they're quite similar. Obviously, each of them having their own, kind of trademarks. What sort of manager would you be, trying to look at? And I know that's a very difficult question to kind of answer.
It is a difficult question. I think you'll get two kind of school of thoughts on this. You'll get the people that say, and they'll use the phraseology of, we want a young, up and coming, front foot, forward thinking manager. And you can attribute names to those things, and you're saying that's what you want. And then I think there's you want someone with some pedigree who's been there and done it. And with all these things, managerial appointments are probably harder than recruiting players as well. Just sometimes it just happens to be the kind of right fit at the right club, and it can obviously be the opposite of that as well. It can be the wrong person in the wrong job at the wrong time. And I think I will just briefly talk over those three people. I think Nathan Jones, with the squad we've got and the style of football he plays, that our squad doesn't match how he's played at Luton. So now that's not to say he could come in and he would do something with what he's got available to him, and he's maybe not a one-trick pony. I don't know. He annoys the hell out of me though, so that kind of on that side of it would be a difficult one to take. But I don't think he's a good fit for us, even though I totally respect what he did at Luton previously. I didn't respect what he did at Southampton, and I didn't respect what he did at Stoke either. But sorry, Danny.
He's had Cornick and Naismith before, so that might be something if he does come.
Yeah. So I think he was a decent man, a very good manager at Luton, and did really, really well with them. But yeah, he annoys the hell out of me. I think the other two, I think Eustace is an interesting one, because I think his style of football at Birmingham is probably different to how he played at Kidderminster, where he was before he then went to QPR as assistant manager, where he was actually kind of probably what you were looking at, maybe not young, because I think he's probably in his mid-40s or something like that. I'm not sure quite how old John Eustace is, but they played some quite progressive kind of football in the conference at Kidderminster, and he was quite lauded for that. So, I don't think we need to necessarily look at how he played with Birmingham and say that's the only way he can play. And I think, in fairness, Birmingham, although they're kind of quite a physical team, they do have some forward options with people like Dembele and people like that, where they've got something a bit different as well. So I think he's a decent manager. And then the last one is Rowett, who's his record at Millwall. And you're shaking your head, and I think a lot of people on one team in Bristol are pretty much the same on that. He's finished something like 8th, 9th, 11th, 9th, or something, something like that in the last 4 years on a fairly constrained budget. That's probably got its appeals on it as well. And people have to make up their minds what style of football they want. And I'm I'm probably a bit different to most in that I can handle a gritty team that defends well and sneaks results. If they do get results, I think it becomes difficult when and it's a bit kind of hypocritical. It becomes a bit difficult when they don't play nice football and they don't get results. So if you're going to play a way like that, you've probably got to get results to kind of fall in favour of the fans. So I think they've all got their merits. They've all probably got their downsides as well. But I think it'd be interesting to see what names start to come out in a bit more earnest over the next day or so, because I think they will, and I think they will want to get someone in for Sheffield Wednesday on Saturday.
So, and obviously you kind of said that you'd want someone who kind of would be a bit able to adapt to this squad from what of their style of play from what we've had at previous clubs, and I do think that's obviously very important. But I also think the squad is very adaptable in terms of what it can do, because we've got some young players in there who are still learning. I'm looking at Taylor Gardner-Hickman, Anis Mehmeti, Tommy Conway, Sam Bell, Cam Pring to a certain extent as well. Those are players who can, got the potential to improve. We've got some experience heads in there: Naismith, King, James, Wells, etc., Vyman. So I think this squad is not. I think whoever comes in can definitely switch the style of play into both extremes. Preferably, nice style of play. But if it was to be a Rowett who has been at Millwall for four and a bit years, and quite stoic, really hard to beat, especially at home. I wouldn't be worried about the squad. I'd just be unhappy about that to watch. But you never know what the owners would do, I suppose. Just finally, if you were to kind of, again, you could kind of circle around the question, but if you were to pick one name in particular, it doesn't have to be the three on the list either, because we've had quite a lot of time to think about this. Who would you be looking at? They could be in a job as well. That could be something we look at.
I think that the person I would have been after, if this was now back in the summer, the manager I'd have gone for was Michael Duff, having just been up the road at Cheltenham previously, and then at Barnsley. I kind of saw a lot of things in him that I liked. I thought he was quite pragmatic about the way he played, quite high tempo, which I think, without necessarily always having to be really attractive football. I think when you see kind of like hard running teams or whatever, I think that identifies someone like Duff, and I just thought he was a good kind of principled manager as well. I think I'd have liked to have seen, in my kind of heart of hearts, he was kind of my succession plan for Nigel Pearson in a season or two's time. But I think we're not going to nick him off Swansea. I'm not sure if he's even in on our list of people that we'd be after anyway. But yeah, someone like that really. I think if you would go in for a real young manager like you've kind of alluded to, Annie, then I think then you start to talk about names like Liam Manning and people like that, and I think whether you'd prize him away from Oxford, I don't know. And I think this is where there'll be a lot of talk about, oh, we'll go for the cheap option, and I don't think Liam Manning at Oxford becomes a cheap option, because we'd have to pay compensation. And I think with all these things, is do they want to bring their staff with them as well? So there's more outlay, etc. So I don't think it's an easy decision to make. And I think over the next 24 hours, we'll probably hear a little bit more from the rumour mill about who they are genuinely looking for. Things don't tend to stay that quiet for that long, unless it's after Lee Johnson and we want to take 6 weeks to do a rigorous search and end up with the guy who's actually the assistant head coach. But yeah, sorry, a bit facetious of me. I actually didn't mind Dean Holden's appointment. I was kind of I'm willing to support any manager really. I'm really disappointed Nigel Pearson's gone. I'm a bit gutted, if I'm being honest, but I'm a Bristol City fan, and assuming we don't get a really divisive appointment like, say, Joey Barton, then I'll get behind who's ever in charge. And I could fit an agenda probably around any manager appointment we make, and either spin it positively or spin it negatively, depending on what I wanted to do. And I think I'm at the point where I'm just going to be pretty open-minded about it and see how they get on.
Has to be a good human being, in the words of Mark Ashton. Otherwise, I will not accept him at the football club. No, just as Fevs, I kind of alluded to during while Fevs was talking, is a young manager who's kind of, you know, got the flexibility, maybe learning on the job a little bit, and that's what I don't want to make comparisons, but Kieran McKenna did at Ipswich in League One, definitely learning on the job. If that's the case, I'm, you know, absolutely fine with it. Giving just someone who wants to come in, you know, clear identity in terms of how they want to play, and are definitely, you know, making progress in terms of imprinting that. Even if it takes a couple of years, happily back it, because we back Nigel Pearson, so might not back the next manager as well. My worry is, well, are the owners going to, you know, see that in the same way?
I think McKenna's a really interesting example, because I think, you know, there's a lot of lack of experience with him. But the one thing that I've noted from, you know, watching Ipswich, and albeit is not, you know, watching them really, really closely, because, you know, you only get snippets of them in League One last year, although kind of got them close at hand last week, is that they play one way and they stick to it. And I think, you know, one of the things that is key in football today is to get recruitment right. And I think if you're only playing one way, that makes recruitment a lot easier. And I think that's what Ipswich had done with McKenna. So I think you know, that's something that we've definitely got to think about, is that style and how we then recruit to that. And I don't think we want to deviate miles away from that straight away with a new manager. So I think, you know, we were alluding to this a little bit earlier, we need someone who's kind of adaptable, who can work with the squad and then gradually get their ideas across, if it's, you know, they're normally, you know, a very different beast in terms of how they play to how we play. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting day or so, I think.
Yeah, just very quickly to finish off, you mentioned the recruitment at Ipswich. The thing is, it's not like they've only recruited youngsters who are going to come in. They have done that, Leif Davis-Williams, but they've also brought in some experience from the Championship and above. I'm thinking of Luongo, Broadhead, Chaplin, Hurst to a certain extent as well. So it's not like they've just gone the young route. They've also kind of mixed up. And I think we have the balance in the squad as well, as I mentioned, the experienced players. Whether or not they, you know, suit the new manager's style of play, you know, I suppose we'll find out. Fevs, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I think we've covered most of the things on the agenda, and hopefully, if you're neutral, you're a bit more, you know, if you're a bit confused over what's actually happened, you know, to get Pearson the sack, because the results actually aren't horrible. So you can look at the teams where we've played and the injury crisis at the moment. Hopefully that's cleared a few things up, and yeah, general thoughts on who the next manager might be, or what we're looking for in the new Bristol City gaffer. Fevs, as I said, thank you very much. Do you want to just plug your Twitter? Because that is a great follow.
You can catch me on Twitter. I'm at Fevs Football Analytics, which is just at Fevs Football, which is FEVS followed by football. You'll see me on there quite active. A lot of stuff around kind of data, although at the moment that's kind of, you know, as we're outside of Windows, with that tends to kind of play second fiddle to talking about the games. But yeah, try and focus on, you know, the analytical side of football, and then my own private one, that's where I go off on my rants.
They're both a great follow. And yeah, I'll put the link in to Fev's Twitter in the description below, so do check that out. Again, thank you very much for coming on, Fevs. Thank you everyone for watching this video as well. And yeah, subscribe, like the video, and Fevs, will you be at Ashton Gate for the Sheffield Wednesday game?
I certainly will.
We both will be there to watch. Well, if there is a new manager, the new manager's first home game. Thank you very much for watching. Keep safe, and we'll catch you very soon. Thank you.